He found a shivering alien girl and gave her his coat. He never knew who her mother was. The rain had been relentless all evening, turning the narrow streets of New Haven Colony into a slick maze of puddles reflecting neon signs. Jax was returning from the market, his coat soaked through and his boots squelching with each step. The last thing he expected to find was someone, or something, huddled in the shadows of the old docking station. A faint whimper drew his attention. At first, he thought it was just the wind playing tricks, but the sound persisted. As he approached, he saw her. A small, shivering figure with luminous violet skin and wide, frightened eyes that reflected the neon glow like twin amethysts. Her hair, silver with streaks of pale blue, clung damply to her delicate shoulders. "Oh, you shouldn't be out here alone," Jack said softly, crouching down to her level. He noticed her trembling violently, her tiny arms wrapped around herself. "Hey, come on. You need warmth." The girl didn't respond, only huddled tighter. Her gaze, though terrified, seemed to search his face for something. Trust, perhaps, or safety. Jack sighed, slipping off his coat and draping it over her small frame. It swallowed her completely, the sleeves dangling past her tiny hands. "There," he whispered. "You'll be warmer now." She glanced up at him, eyes wide and unsure, and for the first time, she spoke in a voice like delicate chimes. "Human, why?" "Because it's raining and you're cold," Jax replied with a nervous chuckle. "Everyone deserves warmth." She hesitated, then allowed herself a shiver-free moment, wrapping herself tighter in the coat. He noticed her breathing slowing, her body gradually relaxing. Jax had never encountered anyone like her before. Not on New Haven Colony, not on any station he'd visited. She was alien unmistakably, yet strangely fragile and familiar. "I'm Jax," he said gently. "What's your name?" The girl's lips trembled. "Lira," she said, barely above a whisper. "Lira," he repeated. "All right, Lira. Come on, let's get you somewhere dry." He scooped her up carefully, mindful of her small weight, and carried her to his apartment, a cramped but cozy space on the 5th level of the colony. Once inside, he placed her on a soft chair near a heater, pulling a blanket over her. Lyra's eyes wandered around, curious but cautious. "You live alone?" she asked, her voice faint. "Yeah," Jax replied. "Quiet but safe. You'll be all right here." Lira stared at him, a mixture of suspicion and longing in her gaze. Hours passed in silence, punctuated only by the soft hiss of the heater and the occasional rain tapping against the windows. Finally she asked, her voice barely audible, "Do you have food?" Jax nodded, smiling. "Of course. Sit, I'll get you something warm." He prepared a simple meal, nutrient paste and warm tea, which she accepted hesitantly. Each bite seemed to give her more courage, her trembling subsiding with every sip of warmth. Days turned into a routine. Jax made sure she was fed, clean, and comfortable. He learned quickly that Lira was clever, curious, and surprisingly perceptive for her age, though she never spoke much about where she came from or who her family was. Occasionally, when she thought he wasn't looking, her eyes would glaze over with sadness, a memory she refused to share. Then, one evening, the unexpected happened. A soft knock echoed through the apartment, followed by a voice that made Jax's heart almost stop. "Lira, is that you?" The voice was gentle yet commanding, filled with an authority that made the hair on the back of his neck stand. Lira froze, her eyes widening in terror. Jax stepped forward, instinctively protective. I don't know who you are," he said, though his instincts screamed that this stranger was important to Lira. The door opened slowly, revealing a tall, elegant woman with the same silver and blue hair and violet skin as Lira, but older, more regal, and radiating an aura of quiet power. Her eyes softened as they fell on the girl curled in Jax's coat. "Lira," the woman said again, her voice breaking slightly. "You've been alone." Lira buried her face into Jax's coat, shaking her head. I didn't know where to go," she whispered. The woman's expression turned to one of understanding, mixed with anguish. "I had to find you. They said it was too dangerous," she murmured. Then, as her gaze shifted to Jax, she offered a small, cautious smile. "Thank you for keeping her safe." Jax felt a strange swell of pride and relief. He nodded silently, unable to find words, realizing the enormity of what he had done, protecting not just an alien child, but a piece of a powerful life he barely understood. The reunion was bittersweet. Lyra's mother explained that they had been fleeing a conflict on their home planet, and in the chaos, Lira had been separated and sent in a transport pod to Earth. She had been searching desperately, following every signal, every trace, until she found her daughter. Jax watched as Lyra's eyes, once fearful and uncertain, lit up with recognition and relief. She ran into her mother's arms, hiding her small face against her chest. The woman held her tightly, whispering words Jax could not understand, but the emotion was clear: love, relief, and unspoken apologies for the separation. Lira glanced back at Jax, a shy smile on her face. "Thank you for my coat," she said. He chuckled softly. "Any time, Lira. Any time." As mother and daughter embraced, Jax realized that some connections were larger than worlds, larger than species. In a universe full of unknowns and dangers, the small acts of kindness, the warmth of a coat, the shelter of a home, could change destinies. And as he watched them leave, the rain finally letting up outside, he knew he would never forget the shivering alien girl who had stepped into his life, bringing a piece of another world, and leaving behind a lesson in courage, compassion, and the unexpected beauty of connection. The rain had finally eased outside, leaving the streets of New Haven Colony glistening under the neon lights. Jax stood silently, watching as Lira curled into her mother's embrace. The woman, tall and regal with the same silver and blue hair, whispered words in a language Jax didn't understand, yet the emotion was unmistakable: relief, love, and a trace of sorrow. Lira peeked over her mother's shoulder at Jax, her violet eyes glimmering with gratitude. "Thank you for my coat," she whispered. Jax smiled softly, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the heater. "Any time, Lira. Any time," he replied. Her mother finally looked at him, her expression a mixture of appreciation and awe. "You kept her safe when no one else could." "Thank you," she said, her voice steady but laden with emotion. The moment was quiet but charged with understanding. Jax realized then that his simple act of kindness had bridged worlds, human and alien, stranger and child, lost and found. Lyra's journey, full of fear and uncertainty, had ended not with grand heroics, but with compassion and trust. As the trio prepared to leave, Jax felt a pang of sadness. He had grown attached to Lira, but seeing her safe and reunited was far more important than his own longing. Lira turned one last time, giving him a shy smile before stepping into her mother's protective embrace.